Welcome. We're just letting people in from the waiting room right now, and we'll be starting in just 1 minute or two. So while you're waiting, I just want you to look over on your side panel there and just get familiar with it. There is a handout that a resource that Alexis has provided to you, and you can download that handout right now or anytime you want to during the talk. So you just click on it and download it. And then also after her talk, you will be able to ask her questions in 2 different ways. So if you just look at your side panel, there will be a little hand that you can indicate, and that lets you ask her the question yourself, and we'll unmute you, or you'll unmute yourself, or you can type in your questions and just look, there's a little question box, and you can put your questions in there, and we will read your question to Alexis. So for you who have just come in, we'll be starting the talk in just a minute. We're just letting people get in from the waiting room, and it'll just be a moment before we start. For those who've just joined us, I was just explaining that Alexis has provided a handout with some resources. So at any time now or during the talk, you can click on that handout and download it to your computer. Well, we are at the top of the hour, and I think everyone has probably joined us now. So I think we'll just begin. Good evening, everyone. We're so glad that you joined us tonight. Gallatin Valley Earth Day is thrilled to have Alexis Alloway from Republic Services with us to talk about the water waste connection. This talk is the last in a series of online talks that we have hosted starting back in March, which concern the quality and future quantity of our water in the Gallatin Valley area. If you'd like to view a recording of one of these talks from the past few months, please go to our YouTube channel, which you can find on our website at www.gallatinvalleyearthday.org. My name is Ann Reddy, and I'm the chair of the Gallatin Valley Earth Day Committee. Gallatin Valley Earth Day's theme, if you haven't caught any of our events yet this year, is celebrating water stewardship, past, present, and future. We chose this theme both because 2022 is the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act, and because we are facing some difficult challenges with our water right now and in the future. Our unprecedented drought, a warming climate, and pollution in our rivers are all issues facing us today. The future also holds concerns. For instance, the city of Bozeman estimates that we will not have enough water for our growing population by 2033. With this in mind, we are glad you've joined us to learn about how we can improve and maintain the quality of our water from Alexis Alloway of Republic Services. But before we proceed with her talk, I just wanted to take a moment to thank our premier sponsors, Gallatin Subaru, Volkswagen of Bozeman, and the City of Bozeman, and our stewards, Sacagawea Audubon Society, Bridger Bowl, Happy Trash Can, and Root Cellar Foods. And last but not least, our fiscal sponsor, Greater Gallatin United Way. Without their generous support, we would not be able to bring you tonight's program. Also, a big thanks to Sacagawea Audubon Society for providing their webinar platform for tonight's program. And lastly, this program is only running smoothly due to Lorene Reed's excellent technical support. Now, before I introduce Alexis, I wanted to let you know, if you didn't hear me at the very beginning when I welcomed you, that Alexis will be taking questions at the end of her talk, and there are 2 ways that you can submit a question to her once she's done. First of all, you can use the raise your hand feature, which is on that side panel on the right side of your screen. In this case, you can ask the question yourself. You can unmute yourself and ask the question. If you don't want to do that, then you can type your question into the questions box, and I'll be reading through the questions, and then reading the questions to Alexis. With that said, I'm very pleased to introduce Alexis Alloway from Republic Services. Alexis is the Municipal Contract Administrator for Republic Services in Bozeman. She spearheads recycling education and community outreach. Alexis has worked as an environmental educator for nearly 2 decades, and she excels at helping people understand complex waste management issues and the simple actions we all can take to minimize our environmental footprint. So with that, Alexis, take it away.
Okay. Thanks so much, Anne, and Gallatin Valley Earth Day, Sacagawea Audubon, and thank you to everyone who is tuning in from home tonight. Anne, are we looking good on technology and my slides are visible?
Sorry, you caught me with my microphone off, but yes, they look great, Alexis.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
Then I will get started. Yeah, so as Anne said, my name is Alexis Alloway. I am the Municipal Contract Administrator for Republic Services here in Bozeman. And if you're not familiar with Republic Services, we are an environmental services company. And here in Bozeman, we provide garbage and recycling hauling service for the entire Gallatin County. So we serve all the communities from Bozeman to Belgrade, Manhattan, out to Three Forks, and then all the way down through Gallatin Gateway, Big Sky to West Yellowstone. And essentially, whatever type of waste you create, whether it's residential waste, whether you want to start a recycling program at your business, or whether you're working on a construction project, we can help you out with reliable, responsible disposal. So Republic Services has been serving the Bozeman community for over 30 years. We are still in the same location over on Huffine, and we have over 40 local employees. Many of them are drivers, but we also have mechanics, welders, operations supervisors, sales staff, etc. I will say I'm impressed at how dangerous the hauling industry can be, and just what a great job our staff do to keep our community clean and safe. So next time you see your driver, you should definitely give them a friendly wave. For Republic Services as a company, we are a national company, and we are an industry leader in the waste industry. We are the second largest hauling and garbage and recycling provider in the nation, and with our size we feel like comes great responsibility. So Republic Services does have a pretty ambitious sustainability platform and goals that we're aiming to reach by the year 2030. We started this endeavor in 2017 and we're already making really good progress. We did have a 5% decrease in our greenhouse gas emissions just in the year 2020, the latest year we have full data for. So overall, we are working on climate change leadership. How do we reduce our emissions, and how do we become more efficient with our fleet of trucks? We're working really hard on building more and more landfill gas to energy projects that capture the methane gas generated by landfills and actually use it for either fuel or electrical power. And then we're also really getting into organics processing, opening more and more composting facilities around the nation, while continuing to look at our recycling centers and see how we can recycle even more and divert more materials from the landfill. One of our core tenets of sustainability is that we also think it's really important to be good neighbors, and we are committed to serving the communities that we operate in. So here in the Gallatin Valley, we do have a community grants program. Every year, we support dozens and dozens of nonprofits, business organizations, even school sports teams, just trying to either donate service to help these organizations out or even give miniature cash grants or sponsorships. And actually, Gallatin Valley Earth Day is one such organization that we're very proud to support this year as a sponsor. My job at Republic Services, I get to have the most fun of anyone who works with us. I basically do community outreach and recycling education. So I liaise with all the different organizations that we support. I help them complete their grant application process. I help make sure that their donations go through. We can volunteer at events if our staff are able to show up. And then I spend a lot of my time just educating the community. So whether that's doing touch a truck events for preschoolers where we talk about safety on the roads and how to be safe around big vehicles, or participating in litter cleanups, going to Belgrade High School tomorrow to teach about plastics pollution. You'll see me out tabling frequently about recycling and waste prevention. So it's really fun and rewarding to get to be out in the community and just engaging people in a topic that does affect all of us, which is garbage. We all create garbage. So when it comes to garbage, or it's technically known as municipal solid waste, I have been working in the industry as an educator for over 10 years. I did work as a consultant prior to taking my job at Republic Services, where I worked for private waste haulers, and I worked for county government and city government on waste prevention and recycling education. And the thing I really like about working in this industry is that it is multifaceted, it's interdisciplinary. I had an environmental studies background in college. I studied sustainability, and every type of course I took comes into play in the waste industry. It starts even with just basic sociology and social studies and human psychology, because ultimately consumer choices are dictating our waste stream. We definitely get into environmental economics. The environment and economy are deeply intertwined. We get into legislation and environmental law and even environmental justice when it comes to waste disposal. When it comes to recycling, it can get quite techy. And we start getting into materials science, chemistry, engineering of systems. And when it comes to landfills and how we dispose of actual garbage, there's a whole slew of natural sciences involved there, from geology to chemistry to soil science to atmospheric science and climate change. And then finally, as you all can imagine, and the reason you're here tonight is that, yes, municipal solid waste does affect our water systems as well. So tonight's talk, we are going to be focusing on water and how the things that we buy and throw away can impact our water resources, both the quantity of water and the quality of water as well. We are going to really focus on those simple R words that you've all heard since you were a kid: reduce, reuse, recycle. And I want you to leave here with a really clear understanding that there is a hierarchy to those terms. It's very intentional and very important. And finally, I want all of you to just realize that our trash does and can have an impact on our water resources. So hopefully you understand just how important it is to not only reduce, reuse, and recycle in that order, but also just to dispose of waste properly, because there are definitely proper versus improper ways to dispose of things we no longer want. Okay, so getting started with water, we are so very lucky to live where we do here in Bozeman and Gallatin County. We do live in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, and it is one of the largest nearly intact temperate ecosystems on Earth. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that water plays a very essential role in our life here in Bozeman. So obviously we need water to drink, we need water for sanitation and to clean and bathe with, and we need water to irrigate so that we can have food for everyone to eat. And at the same time, we also need water for aesthetic reasons and recreation. We have world-class skiing, world-class trout fishing. Floating down a river on a hot summer day is just a quintessential Montana thing to do. So we are very lucky that we have this amazing ecosystem and precious water resources. And yet at the same time, as Anne mentioned in the introduction, and as I'm sure many of you are aware, we do have two major water issues that face us. So the first thing is the quantity, especially when it comes to the city of Bozeman. The city's water sources do rely heavily on snowpack as a source of providing the city's drinking water. And we all know that our snowpack is changing as our climate changes. And so climate change is definitely threatening the availability of water on top of the growing population that we have. And then the other issue is quality, that we absolutely have water pollution issues, even having a relatively sparse population. As the area grows and develops, we do have increased issues with all kinds of pollutants that run off into our local waterways. So that can be everything from sediment and soil from construction sites to grease and oil that's coming off our cars to pet waste, lawn chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, you name it. Essentially, unfortunately, more people equals more pollution in the watershed. So if we are going to understand how our garbage can impact water resources, those may seem like two really separate things. If we're going to make that connection, we actually need to just take some time to critically think about all this stuff we are throwing away on a daily basis. One thing that's worth thinking about is just the sheer amount of garbage that we create. The average person, you or I, we are average, believe it or not, we do create just under 5 pounds of garbage per day, which is almost 1,700 pounds per year. And if we compare that to the global average, we do create 3 times as much garbage as the typical global citizen. So in the United States, about 70% of our garbage does go to landfills versus incineration being kind of the next most common waste disposal method. And here in Gallatin County, regardless of who is taking your trash, all of the garbage that's being hauled away is going out to Logan Landfill. So Logan Landfill is about 30 miles west of Bozeman, out on Highway 90, kind of out near Three Forks. And the astonishing thing to me is that in 2021, I just got the data from the landfill, Logan Landfill did receive over 1 million pounds of garbage per day. Okay, 1.12 million pounds of trash every day. And the worst thing about it is 70% of that garbage is not garbage. So I want you to think about that for a second. Okay, 700,000 pounds of stuff every day isn't garbage. Well, what is it? It's resources. It's things that we shouldn't be landfilling because we could be using those things, whether it's perfectly good things like a couch that someone doesn't want, or something that's recyclable like cardboard boxes, or even organic compostable materials like yard waste or food scraps. So bottom line is we create a lot of trash, and sadly, a lot of that trash really should not be going to Logan. So let's take a look at what happens to the garbage that we do send there. So when your garbage gets dumped at the landfill, pretty much the first thing that happens is that machines compact the trash and pile it up, and they're just trying to squish it down as much as possible. So here you see the machine pushing. It'll also drive right up on top of it and crush from above. And the whole reason we compact the garbage is that we really do want to optimize efficiency. We want to smush that garbage so that we can pack as much garbage as possible inside the landfill, just so that we can maximize the efficiency of the landfill, get as much life out of it as possible. So after your garbage is compacted, all day we have trucks coming and going. On the typical summer busy day, Logan will see about 300 truckloads of trash. And then once that garbage is dumped out, when the landfill closes at the end of the day, it is covered with daily cover, which is essentially organic material that they get on site. So they kind of chip all the wood and put it on top to minimize smells and odors, and also to prevent birds, wildlife, etc., from getting into the trash. And then the next day when the landfill opens, they just start piling trash on top of the last night's daily cover. So if we kind of could take like an X-ray view of what's going on, the key thing to understand about a landfill is that we are not just digging a hole in the ground and throwing garbage in it, and layers of garbage. A landfill, a modern landfill, is actually a highly engineered system. And the entire point of this system is that we are essentially trying to build a closed system. We want to build an underground container where nothing can get in and nothing can get out, because we just want to store this stuff that nobody wants in a way that protects human health and protects the environment. So on the slide that you see right now, you're actually able to see kind of inside the landfill here, because it's showing you one of the new cells when it was under construction. And to take a different view, we're going to kind of look at a cross section here to see a better idea of what's going on. So first, I will say the environmental protection starts just by siting the landfill. We do aim to site landfills in locations that have more impermeable soil layers, where it's less likely for water or anything to leak through the soil and reach into our groundwater. And ideally, we also try to put landfills in dry locations. So with Logan Landfill out there, the last couple years, they only get 9 inches of precipitation per year. And that's a good thing to site a landfill in a drier location, because it means we are going to have less water that will essentially leak down through the different layers of the landfill and then become a water issue for us to deal with. So once we find a nice dry location, hopefully with geology that is conducive to protecting the groundwater, hopefully the groundwater layers are lower down, the next thing we do is we try to build a pretty comprehensive system of layers. So out at Logan, what that looks like is it starts by compacting the soil once they dig the hole, really just to squish it nice and tight so that water can't percolate down through it easily. After that, on top of the compacted soil, we do have a clay and silt layer that is also pretty impermeable. And then on top of that, Logan Landfill does use a double liner system. So essentially what you can think of that as is the first layer is essentially similar to carpet padding. We then put a 60 millimeter high density polyethylene liner on top of that. So we essentially have plastic on top of like a rubbery plastic. And the design there is intended that if the HDPE liner punctures for some reason, the carpet pad type material actually expands to fill any gaps. So we have this multi-layer, essentially super thick plastic lining at the bottom. Then we start putting garbage in, and then we also do have some pipe infrastructure that is in the base of the landfill as well. So essentially, landfills create 2 main byproducts. They do create methane gas, which is what you smell. So we have a system of essentially wells to trap that gas and pipes to transport it. And then we also have a system of pipes to manage the leachate water that collects at the bottom of the landfill. So leachate essentially refers to what I would call garbage juice. So when it rains, the rainwater does percolate down through the garbage, and it can pick up all kinds of pollutants in that process. So that polluted water essentially that has all these chemicals and who knows what in it, we now call that leachate, and that is something that we want to manage because we don't want that to escape into the environment. So at Logan, because it is a pretty dry environment, the leachate actually gets piped into an evaporation pond, which you can see in this picture right here. And essentially it just sits there and it does evaporate. So the pond has multiple layers of lining. The water that's polluted goes into it. The actual water itself evaporates over time, and this keeps that polluted water out of the surrounding ecosystem. Something else to note is that the landfill is also very intentionally engineered and designed to manage stormwater runoff. We want to minimize the amount of water that can become leachate by diverting it from entering the active parts of the landfill in the first place. So essentially, we have multiple layers of design and engineering that are trying to trap and contain the leachate that the landfill creates. And then this is really different from places with wetter climates. I used to work in King County, Washington, where Seattle is, where obviously it's much wetter, their landfill is much bigger, and bigger, wetter landfills like that will actually have full-on wastewater treatment systems because they generate way more leachate than can be managed through evaporation. So it has to actually go through a treatment process. And then finally, just something else to realize about landfills is they do have limited space. There's only so much garbage we can safely pile up and engineer. And at some point when a cell of the landfill is full, we cap it by putting plastic layers on top, then we put soil on top of that, then we put plants and vegetation. Once the cell is closed, it will have to be monitored for both methane and leachate kind of groundwater monitoring over the years. And that's something else to be aware of, just that out at Logan, we do have multiple forms of monitoring. So I think they have 8 different stations where they monitor groundwater for pollution. They have certain standards that they have to meet, which have not been an issue, which is fantastic. And same thing with methane. They do also monitor the methane that's coming out of the landfills, because essentially we have regulations that have to be met to make sure that the landfill is doing its job properly. And then I guess the final thing most people don't realize is once we have capped the landfill, we do essentially have this mountain of garbage. This picture you're looking at is a landfill from the East Coast. It's not Logan, but it gives you the idea that, yep, we've created this man-made structure. It has altered the landscape for sure. And unfortunately, the garbage that's inside of this landfill really isn't gonna go away. Landfills by design are anaerobic environments. There's very little oxygen underground where all this garbage is packed together. There's no sunlight, there's no access to fresh air. And so what that means is that decomposition inside a landfill is extremely limited. Even if we put organic materials like a newspaper in the landfill, we could dig that up in 100 years and it's still going to be there in recognizable form because this system is not engineered to make things decompose, and we are sending a lot of materials to the landfill that are synthetic or petroleum based, and they won't decompose. So really the way I think of a landfill is it is an underground storage container. Imagine that we're just taking a Rubbermaid box with a lid, nothing can get in, nothing can get out. We're putting that on top of some other impermeable layers, and we're kind of burying it underground as a time capsule that we are leaving for future generations. So in a way, there's good news here, which is I think most people don't realize that a landfill isn't a garbage dump. It actually is a highly engineered, highly monitored, and highly regulated system that uses multiple layers of defense to protect our waterways from pollution and to try to protect our atmosphere from pollution. However, the bad news here is that unfortunately, when it comes to all this stuff we are buying and throwing away, the real environmental impacts of our trash actually occur long before it gets to Logan Landfill. So what I mean here is that pretty much everything at the landfill started off as something that someone bought, or at least a majority of those materials. We go to the store, we buy something, we use it for its usable life, maybe we even reuse it, and at some point, most things we use will reach an end of life, and if we can't recycle them, many things are not recyclable, they do end up at the landfill. So every single thing we buy doesn't just poof, magically appear at a store on a shelf somewhere. When we stop and think about it, we need to realize that just like living organisms go through a life cycle, all these different steps from birth until death, the stuff that we buy and throw away also goes through a life cycle. It has all these different stages, and the landfill, the part that we see or think about, is actually just one teeny tiny portion of that life cycle. So let's investigate the life cycle of our typical disposable coffee cup. If I go grab coffee at Starbucks or any coffee shop in town, it'll probably be served in a paper cup that has a poly. Our first step of making that paper coffee cup is actually raw materials. So for the paper components, we are going to have to send logging trucks out into a forest. That's going to use a whole bunch of fossil fuels, and those trucks will definitely impact local waterways. We are going to be using a bunch of diesel fuel or gas and oil to run our chainsaws and cut down trees. And then when it comes to the plastic lining, the main natural resource there is that we are going to have to drill for petroleum, which also will have impacts on local water resources. So once we get these raw materials, we cut down trees, we're drilling for oil, there is going to be transportation, which also will involve more oil and natural resources because we need to send the raw materials for manufacturing. So this stage of the life cycle is pretty complicated. We don't send like oil and trees to just one factory and magically get a paper cup coming out the other side. We're actually going to have multiple factories involved. So with our trees, they are first going to go to some sort of facility to be debarked and chipped. After that, so that's going to use water, that's going to use fossil fuels or energy. After that, we're then going to send it to another factory. So we're, again, having more impacts with oil, gas, transportation, how that affects our runoff and local water resources. We're then going to send it to another factory to be pulped and bleached. And as you can imagine, the bleaching process absolutely will have, it will create wastewater issues wherever that process is happening. Once we pulp it, we're probably going to transport it again and send it to another factory where we will use a bunch of energy and water machines to essentially press the pulp into paper, roll it into cup shape. And then at the same time, our oil was being refined, probably turning into some kind of plastic chip or pellet that'll be transported. Eventually it'll get to the same factory as the cup. The plastic lining will be poured in, and then voila, we've got paper coffee cups. So the plastic lining that'll get put in some kind of plastic packaging, I'm sure, and then they're going to go to, you know, Starbucks or the local coffee store, the consumer stage. So don't forget, there's going to be transportation again there as we are shipping all these paper cups to the store. And then at the store, we also have the store using energy from fossil fuels, likely using water resources. We, the consumers, using energy and natural resources as we hop in our car to drive to the store to get our coffee. And then the way many products end their life cycle, or the way this coffee cup should here in Bozeman, is it should go in the garbage. We can't recycle paper coffee cups with a plastic lining here in Bozeman because we don't have a buyer for that material. It's really difficult to separate the plastic from the paper. So what that means is Republic Services has to send our trucks out on the road. We collect your trash and we drive it 30 miles out to Logan Landfill, where the landfill then uses even more diesel and fossil fuels to compact your trash, bury it underground, etc. So as you all can see, Unfortunately, what you see with that little paper coffee cup is not all there is to it, right? When we look at a little paper coffee cup, it weighs nothing. It seems like such a little bit of material, but embedded in the life cycle of that material, especially with paper products, is a tremendous amount of water usage, fossil fuel usage, natural resource use for kind of the base ingredients, and then all the resultant air pollution and water pollution that occurs at all these different steps along the way. So when it comes to the stuff we buy and throw away, every single thing that we use goes through some sort of life cycle. And I do think it's pretty fair to say that a lot of those life cycles are pretty complicated in the modern day and age of international commerce. Some products that contain fewer materials, maybe they're made locally, are definitely simpler and have a lower overall footprint than others. And it's kind of interesting to look at this slide when we think about just something like drink packaging, where, okay, I'm thirsty, I stop by a gas station, I want to grab a drink. I've got a bunch of different choices, from a glass bottle to a carton or a can or different thickness soda bottles. And all those different choices have a different environmental impact because they use different resources and go through different processes. So it is kind of interesting when we focus specifically on water to see that essentially glass manufacturing does require a lot of water use. And this example doesn't have a lot of paper, but essentially manufacturing paper from virgin materials also does require quite a bit of water use. And it is interesting to see that plastics, which obviously have a lot of environmental impacts and disposal challenges, etc. When it comes to the amount of water usage, they actually use less water just because of how the material is manufactured. And they're also lighter weight, so they have fewer greenhouse gas emissions than, let's say, a really heavy glass bottle. Yeah, so with life cycle analyses, it is great and helpful to realize that, okay, everything we buy is going through a life cycle, and essentially just trying to focus on simpler products with a simpler life cycle is really where it's at. One thing to realize about life cycles is pretty much the worst way a product can end its life cycle is to send it to a landfill, especially if it is something that could be recycled or reused. So essentially, a landfill is a one-way ticket to a dead end. When we send something to a landfill, it does get smushed, crushed, contaminated by other materials. Everything is all mixed together. Essentially, anything we send to the landfill is not going to be able to be used again. So what that means is if I throw something away, like here's an office paper right here, that's a bummer, because now that we've thrown that paper away, I'm going to need more paper, and that means that we now have to send those lumberjacks out into the forest to cut down trees to go through that entire product life cycle all over again and make new paper from virgin natural resources. So this is where many of you have probably heard about what we call the circular economy. And a simple solution, something way, way better than throwing that paper in the landfill, is to recycle it. When we recycle a material, essentially it goes from the consumer stage, me the consumer, I'm using the paper, and now by recycling it, it is going to get transported to a recycling facility. It'll get sorted out, and then it'll get transported again to an actual recycling facility or a manufacturing plant, where it will be cut up or melted down and remanufactured into a new product. So the really cool thing about this is that the material is being essentially reused when we recycle it, and that means that we don't have to extract raw materials. We can skip that entire part of the product life cycle, and we can also oftentimes cut down on the amount of transportation, which is going to have really positive impacts on fossil fuel use as well as water pollution when we have fewer trucks on the road, ships crossing oceans, etc. So what this kind of gets to, or the really important thing for people to realize, is that, as I said at the start, our words, reduce, reuse, recycle, do come in a hierarchy. And we do need to realize that while recycling this paper is better than throwing it in the garbage, at the end of the day, recycling is not a perfect solution. So essentially, the diagram you're looking at now shows us our kind of waste hierarchy, where basically the higher up we go, the bigger it gets, and the friendlier the color is with the color green, because the better the choice is for the environment. So with this paper, disposal at the bottom pretty much is the worst choice, as we talked about. Some places look at recovery, which is essentially burning this in incineration to use it for energy, which is modestly better than just throwing it to the landfill to sit. Or recycling, as we talked about, we can make it into something new. But with this specific sheet of paper, this came out of my office reuse pile. So this sheet of paper has only been used on one side, and way, way better than recycling it actually is to reuse it. Okay, I've got this entire blank side. If every one of us reused every sheet of paper before recycling it, we would significantly cut down on the amount of paper that we use, which would in turn save lots of trees, fossil fuels, etc. So finally, reusing it is great, but then ultimately at the very top of my hierarchy, the most preferred thing I can do is just waste prevention, or essentially reducing. Of, before I grab that sheet of paper, just stop and think, do I actually need to use paper, or is there a way I can meet my objective using fewer natural resources? So paper is a great example in the modern era of something that we can use less of, okay, back in the day, maybe I had to write a note and send it to you. Maybe I had to print something out, but nowadays it's a lot easier to do things electronically where we're not using as much physical paper material. So really, reducing does have tremendous, tremendous impacts on conserving natural resources. So with our waste hierarchy, the key idea here is that a lot of people feel good when they can recycle or compost stuff, and they just don't realize that recycling and composting are not perfect solutions. And at the end of the day, we do live on a planet that basically is a closed system. We do have limited natural resources. At the same time, we have a growing human population, and in that circumstance, we can't consume our way to sustainability with like eco-friendly products. Ultimately, all consumption, no consumption is truly eco-friendly, because all consumption does use energy and resources, which absolutely has environmental impacts. And so I think where I see this even is with composting, especially here in Bozeman, I'm seeing more and more places using compostable materials, and that is great. I think that is better than using styrofoam takeout containers, let's say, that are made of petrochemicals. But I would not say that using disposable compostable materials is sustainable. We really do need to realize that at the end of the day, the disposable society of, okay, we send something through this entire life cycle just to use it for 3 minutes and then throw it away and make a new one, that is not sustainable. And reduction, reduce, truly is our best option. All right, so no matter how hard we try to reduce, reuse, and recycle in that order, at the end of the day, the bottom line is we still are going to create garbage, because unfortunately, we do use all kinds of materials that we either physically have not figured out how to recycle the material, we don't have the right technology to sort it, or just the economics of recycling it don't work out. And so what that means is, yes, we are going to create garbage. We're going to have waste products. and we need to borrow from Leave No Trace outdoor ethics. And then we need to be conscious of how we are disposing of our waste, and we need to make sure we are disposing of waste properly. So one of the most improper ways we can dispose of municipal solid waste or garbage is to flush it down the toilet. It is surprising to me the crazy stuff that people flush down toilets. At the end of the day, anything you flush down a toilet is either going into your septic system or it's going into the city's wastewater treatment system. And so what we need to realize is, first, we can definitely flush things that create plumbing problems just with the engineering of the systems. That's no fun when we have to pay for that or deal with it. And then secondly, when we put stuff down the toilet, the city wastewater treatment system has to essentially pick that stuff out and then send it to the landfill, which is very energy intensive. So really, when it comes to flushing, there are three and only three things we should be flushing in the toilet, and that's pee, poop, and toilet paper. I might add puke, I think that's okay, so 4 P's, but essentially anything else you should not be flushing down the toilet. So one of the common things that some people have been told to flush is pharmaceuticals. Let's say you have unused prescription medication or you have expired over-the-counter medications. Back in the day, especially, they used to heavily promote flushing these drugs and medicines down the toilet. And we realized that that is not the best way to dispose of pharmaceutical waste. When we flush pharmaceutical waste, if we're in the city system, it will go through the wastewater treatment process. But unfortunately, the wastewater treatment process is not 100% effective. It can get our water, and it does get our water really clean, like 99% clean. But pharmaceuticals are one of the things that can kind of pass through the system that can't be fully removed. And then once essentially our wastewater gets discharged into the East Gallatin River, what that means is that, yes, we are discharging, trace elements of different pharmaceuticals, and studies of water, river sediment, and fish across the world have seen that, oh yeah, we're seeing more and more pharmaceuticals showing up in our waterways. And that can have all kinds of impacts, from disrupting fish reproduction to altering fish behavior, and who knows what that does to our own human health. So when it comes to pharmaceuticals, drugs, and medicines, the ideal way to dispose of these is to use medicine take-back programs. So here in Gallatin County, pretty much all of our police stations, Belgrade, Bozeman, Livingston, West Yellowstone, they do have medication take-back boxes in their lobbies. And then a lot of the pharmacies also do as well. So this is the ideal thing, is to send the drugs to those take-backs where mix it with something unpalatable like kitty litter or coffee grounds. Ideally, put it in a jar or a plastic container and then put it in your trash. So the whole idea is that nothing can break into it or get into it. And if they do break into it, it's going to be mixed with something that just doesn't taste good. Okay, so yeah, let's really work on just trying to use the take-back programs for our drugs. So another form of waste that we need to think about disposing of properly is household hazardous waste. This category includes a lot of different things that we might use in our garage, to our kitchen, to cleaning our house, to our lawn and garden. And in the supplemental resources, I did link to a very comprehensive list from Gallatin County of what household hazardous waste entails. So with household hazardous waste, we do prefer for people to use our Gallatin County's household hazardous waste take back programs. So Logan Landfill will take some basic materials. You can check their website during their regular business hours. And then once a month on the second Saturday of the month from 9 until noon, the Bozeman convenience site over at Story Mill does take HHW collection for free. So I do recommend even just following Gallatin County Solid Waste Management District on Facebook or social media. They're really good about promoting and reminding people of the HHW take back days. And it's great to keep this stuff out of our landfill. And by disposing of it through the HHW program, it will either go for incineration or to a hazardous waste specific landfill. With the household hazardous waste, I look at some of these products and I'm reminded that, oh, I don't even use a lot of this stuff because there is no need to, especially anything that has words like caution or danger or warning or poison. You should really get in the habit of reading labels. And when we see those kind of trigger words telling us this is bad stuff, it's just great to try not to use it unless you absolutely have to. There are all kinds of eco-friendly natural cleaners, whether it's using baking soda, vinegar, lemon, natural cleaning supplies that we can buy at the store, using compost for our garden instead of buying petrochemical fertilizers. There are all kinds of alternatives. And again, just trying to reduce in the first place is our optimal choice for protecting, especially our local water resources. Under the umbrella of hazardous waste, we do have batteries, which is something people frequently ask me about. Most or many rechargeable batteries technically are considered hazardous waste, so we don't want people putting those batteries in the landfill. And the biggest issue with batteries, to be perfectly honest, is the fire hazard that they create. Our local recycling center, Four Corners Recycling, has definitely had fires because of lithium batteries being put in the recycling. Our trucks at Republic Services, both garbage and recycling, have absolutely had fires caused due to improper battery disposal. So people need to realize that batteries in an ideal world really just should not go in the garbage because they are a major hazard. And then when it comes to plain old alkaline batteries like AA's, AAA's, our common household batteries, technically those batteries are not hazardous waste, but we do like for people to recycle them. And the reason why is just that they contain valuable resources. By recycling those batteries through battery recycling programs, the metal can be recycled into new metals. We can extract zinc oxide from them that can be used as an additive for ceramics or making plastics. So again, that bucket of old batteries that we're looking at, that's not actually garbage. That bucket does contain resources that we should be sending to recycling so that we can reuse those resources instead of sending them to that dead end of the landfill. So for battery recycling here in Bozeman, you can always bring batteries of any type to Logan Landfill. There's battery drop-off as well as the Bozeman convenience site. And then we do also have plenty of local stores, a lot of the hardware stores, Target, Staples, that will take back both rechargeable and alkaline batteries. So I recommend calling ahead. Just things obviously change, especially with COVID, but there are tons of sites all over town that can help us keep those batteries out of the landfill. And then one final form of waste we need to think about disposing of properly is electronic waste. So kind of getting into all of our cameras and laptops and monitors and screens and scanners and pagers and cell phones and all this good stuff. So electronic waste, as I'm sure you can imagine, is a rapidly growing part of the waste stream, just due to our tech society and also due to planned obsolescence. That, okay, Apple releases a new iPhone and on the day they release it, they know and they intend that in 2 years, it's going to be obsolete. There's going to be a better product that's going to leave you wanting to run out and buy a new one. So every single year, 50 million tons of electronic waste are generated worldwide, and only about 12% of that electronic waste gets recycled. A lot of it does get exported to developing countries, which causes all kinds of issues, where essentially the recycling is occurring literally out in the open air on the side of a road in a shanty town by humans who are not protected from some of the chemicals and heavy metals that they're handling. So that's really not ideal, and it's really creating human health and environmental hazards when we're exporting e-waste overseas to places that essentially have no regulation. So with e-waste, unfortunately, electronic waste does contain chemicals that can absolutely be harmful to our water and to human health, everything from flame retardants to toxic metals and persistent organic pollutants. When we look at toxic waste that is found in different landfills, we find essentially trace materials from e-waste account for 70% of that toxic waste. So again, this is waste that we absolutely should not be sending to ordinary landfills that are not hazardous waste management facilities. And the other thing to think about with our electronic devices is they do have complicated life cycles, and they contain a lot of ingredients or raw materials. A modern smartphone has over 60 different metals in it, including rare earth materials. So not only are there the environmental concerns about human health and our water resources, but it's also just a sheer resource use concern of metals are non-renewable resources we have limited amounts for, we have skyrocketing demand for in a growing population. We really don't want to be throwing all these metals in landfills and sending them to that dead end. So at this point, hopefully for Dispose of Waste Properly, you all are realizing that we do have a landfill. That's a great thing, but our local landfill is not designed to accommodate hazardous waste materials like pharmaceuticals, household hazardous waste products, batteries, and electronic waste. And we want to make sure that we all take the time to dispose of these things through take back programs and recycling programs to protect our natural resources. So what I want to also focus on is one of the biggest problems we have with water and waste here locally is that while there are things we should not be sending to the landfill, there also are things we should be sending to the landfill that we're not, and that are creating problems. To me, the number one issue when I think of how does our garbage locally affect our water resources, I absolutely think about litter. And it is really astonishing the amount of litter that is in our community, especially for being the gateway to the Yellowstone ecosystem. It is a bummer to me that, you can walk down any city street in Bozeman, 90 can be a disaster, where there is just literally garbage strewn everywhere in the environment. So this is somewhere that you and I as ordinary citizens really can make a positive impact with litter. So what happens to all this stuff we throw outside? Well, traditionally, the way humans disposed of waste was we did just throw stuff in the environment, and nature would decompose it. So whether that's animals would eat it or microorganisms would break it down through decomposition, naturally nature's system to waste was recycling through decomposition. But unfortunately, nowadays, a lot of our waste stream is made of plastic. And when we throw plastic into the ecosystem, it does not decompose, because living organisms, decomposers like earthworms and bugs and different arthropods and bacteria, they don't have the enzymes in their stomach to digest and process petrochemicals, which is what traditional plastics are made from. The picture I'm showing you here was a picture I just took in Uganda when I was there a couple years ago. In the developing world, a lot of developing countries don't have the money and resources we have to build really nice high-tech landfill systems. Garbage does get piled up outside, and as you can see, plastics have proliferated in the developing world, and unfortunately, they don't go away. So when we throw plastic into the ecosystem, plastics basically are forever. And what happens is they will degrade over time from photo degradation from the sunlight. It'll make the plastic a bit more brittle, and then mechanical degradation of, okay, I might step on a brittle plastic cup that's been sitting outside and it'll crunch and shatter into smaller parts. But what happens is that plastic won't degrade or decompose. It will just break into smaller and smaller parts over time. It'll get blown into waterways, and eventually a lot of our plastic does end up in the oceans. We've all heard about the plastic waste in the Pacific Ocean and so on and so forth. When it comes to plastic pollution, I think it's kind of easy for people in Montana to feel detached from it, of, oh, that's the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that's so far away, what does that have to do with me? But the reality is that we absolutely have plastic pollution in our ecosystems here in Montana and right here in our very own rivers. So a couple years ago, I think it was from 2013 to 2017, Adventure Scientists, a local nonprofit based here out of Bozeman, did a pretty comprehensive study of microplastics, both locally in the Gallatin River. Oh, they found that 57% of Gallatin River sites contained microplastics, which is pretty shocking because we do live in this nice, quiet, sparsely populated, remote part of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So it's kind of crazy to realize that, wow, microplastics are proliferating even in these remote corners. So one direct cause of the microplastic pollution absolutely is litter. That, you know, stuff blows away, it breaks down smaller, it washes into the Gallatin River, which eventually will even make its way out into the Gulf of Mexico. So obviously, you and I as the consumer, pretty much the best thing we can do is don't litter. It's definitely easier to stay out of trouble than get out of trouble. It's a lot easier to prevent plastic pollution through preventing litter rather than to have to try to clean up all these little micro bits and pieces, especially once it's in the ecosystem. One way you can prevent litter, besides the obvious don't throw stuff outside or let it blow away, is to bag your garbage. People don't realize that if you don't bag your garbage, let's say you just got home, you're cleaning out your car, you just want to open the trash can and throw loose items in. When we do that, if that garbage is not bagged, there is a good chance that lightweight, loose items, especially plastic, will get caught in the Montana wind as our trucks are dumping it, either on your street when they're tipping the cart into our truck or when we're tipping our truck at the landfill. So it is really, really important to always make sure that all of your garbage is secure in a big bag that's a lot less likely to blow away during the tipping process than little tiny bits and pieces. The Logan landfill works really hard to minimize litter from the landfill because the winds do catch litter. So anything we can do to help out with that, they have fencing, they do litter cleanups, but trying to contain our trash really is going to help the landfill do a better job. And then the other issue is just people not securing their materials when they're moving out and about through town. I do think being in a college town, people move frequently. I have definitely seen a truck go by, open windows in the summer or unsecured load in the back, and then debris, you know, taking off from the car or truck and getting into our local environment. So it is really important if we're moving stuff to make sure that it's tarped, secured, fully covered, and not going anywhere. Okay, another major form of litter or pollution in our local ecosystem is pet waste. And this is a big one for water quality, unfortunately. So as of, I think 2 or 3 years ago, Bozeman's estimate was that there were 30,000 dogs in the city of Bozeman. The average dog produces anywhere from 1/2 pound to 3/4 of a pound of pet waste every single day. And the major issue with pet waste is actually not that it's unsightly. Yes, it is unsightly, but it's the bacteria load that is found in dog waste especially. So a single gram of dog poop, a gram is essentially equivalent to the weight of a business card. 1 gram of pet waste can contain 23 million fecal bacteria. So unfortunately, when we don't clean up after our dogs, the major issue, even if your dog is pooping in a field in the middle of nowhere in the national forest with no one around for 20 miles, the issue isn't aesthetics or someone stepping in it. The true issue is that dog poop is a major bacterial concern that can contaminate our waterways with E. coli, fecal coliform bacteria, and parasites, things that are obviously not good for human health. And then the other issue with pet waste is when it does get washed or blown into waterways, what happens is that the pet waste releases nutrients into water, which can cause algal blooms and can also just use up oxygen in the water, which can have really negative impacts on our fish population. So at the end of the day, dog owners need to take responsibility for their dogs, and they do need to scoop it, bag it, and trash it. With dog waste, we do see people who scoop it and bag it, but then leave it on the side of the trail. They say they're going to come back later, but I can tell you as an avid trail user and runner that they don't come back later all the time. I think best practices when it comes to dog waste is whether it's in your yard or in the middle of nowhere, we really do have a responsibility to scoop it, bag it, and trash it. We don't want pet waste ending up in our ecosystem, and Logan Landfill really is the best place that we could or should be sending that waste. Okay, so kind of getting at now what? Well, at this point, we've met our goals of we learned about product life cycles and how every single thing we buy or throw away uses water throughout its life cycle and causes water pollution, especially in our manufacturing stage. We did gain a better understanding of why reducing our consumption is so much more important than reusing or recycling. And then we also just got a great understanding of, okay, there are some things we shouldn't put in the landfill, like hazardous waste and batteries and cleaning chemicals and all that good stuff. And then there are things like litter and dog waste that we should. So I want to kind of end people on the like, well, what do we do with this information? How do I apply this to my actual life? One of the easiest places to start making a difference is the simple act of recycling. Recycling doesn't take a lot of time or effort, and it really does make a tremendous difference in conserving water and minimizing water pollution through manufacturing processes. In Gallatin County, we can recycle cardboard, most papers that you read and write with that don't have a plastic coating on them. We can recycle most cans, and we can recycle #1 plastic bottles and #2 plastic bottles and jugs. Please make sure everything you recycle is empty, clean, and dry, and keep our recycling stream clean, meaning don't contaminate. When in doubt, throw it out. Recycling only works when we put the right materials in the bins. Cardboard is a great place to look at or to kind of start our recycling efforts. Every year, Americans use 100 billion corrugated cardboard boxes, which is really crazy when you think about it. and only about 70% of them get recycled. So unfortunately, literally tons and tons of cardboard are going to landfills every year. With recycling, every ton of cardboard that we recycle not only saves 9 cubic yards of space in our landfill, helping to preserve its life, but it also saves 700 gallons of water. Again, manufacturing paper products is very water intensive. So aiming to recycle cardboard, which is so easy, it's easy to identify, you flatten it, you put it in the bin and go on with your life. If everybody recycled all their cardboard, that would have a tremendous impact on conserving and protecting water. Another reminder with recycling is recycling only works if we close the loop by someone actually buying recycled products. So this is something, especially with paper products, you can look for labels and do try to buy things that are made from recycled materials. When we support the markets or the end use, it just helps the entire system work. Something else to think about in addition to recycling, which is really easy, is reducing your paper use by reusing. To me, it's pretty horrifying how many things I get in the mail or from the doctor that are just printed on one side. So at home, I do have my little bin in the office of papers that are good on one side. And so when I need to write something, print something on just one side, scratch out some notes, sometimes I chop them up and actually make little notepads. My personal goal is I try not to recycle a paper until I have truly used both sides. And again, if we all did this, we would use half as much paper, which would have tremendous impacts, not just for preserving and protecting water, but just also for climate change. Of let's keep more trees standing instead of hemorrhaging through them as we waste paper and are very inefficient with it. Another real low-hanging fruit to minimize your paper waste is to unsubscribe to junk mail. When I bought my house, the former owner was a shopaholic, and I received like 40 catalogs every week. So I soon learned about an awesome free online platform called catalogchoice.org, where you can unsubscribe to junk mail super easily. I've also had really good success just contacting the companies directly, giving them my information and telling them to remove me from their mailing list. The average person in the US receives over 40 pounds of junk mail per year, and a conservative estimate with water usage, when we think about the life cycle of that, is that we would save 15 billion gallons of water every year if we didn't have all that junk mail circulating out there. That, again, people aren't even reading, they're just literally grabbing it and disposing of it. Some other things to think about are just getting away from the disposable consumer economy, because it's not sustainable to manufacture something, use it one time for a really short amount of time, and then throw it away. I do think if your focus is on water resources, that disposable paper products are a great place to start. And that doesn't mean that you should never ever use a paper towel or a paper napkin or a paper coffee cup again. But even if you use cloth towels 90% of the time, you bring your own mug or ask for your coffee in a for here mug 90% of the time. If you alone did that, it would have tremendous savings. And if we all could do that in our city, in our county, in our state, it would have absolutely tremendous impacts on water resource conservation. Another kind of part of our material stream that has huge impacts on water as well as climate is food. And food waste does make up, it's basically the most common item that we throw in the garbage. The average person wastes about 1 pound of food per day. And while that may not sound like a lot, when we consider all 300 something million people in the US, every year, the US throws out 80 billion pounds of food. So the picture you are seeing on the screen right now is a picture that I took. I actually worked on a food waste study through World Wildlife Fund where we conducted food waste audits in schools, and it was absolutely horrifying to see completely uneaten sandwiches, completely unopened oranges, an apple with a mouse-sized bite taken out of it, thrown in the trash can. And I'm not picking on kids, it's not just kids, adults are just as bad. And unfortunately, this food that we're thoughtlessly tossing in the compost bin even is having huge impacts just because of the life cycle to make that food. So when it comes to water usage, all foods are not created equal. Certain food items, especially certain types of meat, dairy products, etc., do have higher water usage or a bigger water use footprint than other items. So that's something we can think about when we're deciding, okay, what am I going to eat today, right? That's a choice I'm making that affects natural resources. So just being aware that yes, the things that we eat come from nature, go through complicated life cycles, and do have really big impacts. Not wasting food not only saves natural resources, it does save a ton of money. The average family in the US throws away about $1,700 worth of edible food every year. When I read that, that alone just motivated me to really crack down on my food waste at home. And I will say that with some simple changes, we hardly ever throw out food unless something somehow gets forgotten about and gets moldy. So some of the biggest things I found to be helpful are definitely planning ahead. I plan out my menu for the entire week, so I think about kind of using up old ingredients into the next dish. I definitely shop my pantries and my freezer first before I go to the store, so I make a shopping list and I stick to it. It's really easy to get suckered into overbuying. Buy one, get one free, or this is on sale, or you buy the super size. And I've definitely seen in a household of two that even though it's cheaper to buy the big container of sour cream, let's say, there's no way we're going to eat it before it spoils. So I have learned that, okay, it's more expensive by the ounce, but I buy the small container, recognizing that otherwise I'm just going to throw half of it away. We all should just definitely get in the habit of either saving leftovers and eating them, or just don't cook that much if you're someone who says they don't like leftovers. And then just smart storage system where we use clear containers in the fridge, make sure things are clearly labeled at eye level. It's really all about keeping things visible and accessible so that we eat things before they do go bad. And then finally, just remembering that we do have a freezer, and that's also a great way to, preserve the life of that bread that's about to get moldy, or you bought too many strawberries, so just cut them up and freeze them. Okay, some final thoughts of things that we all can do are we can definitely get involved in stewardship of our local community, especially when it comes to disposing of waste properly. Right now, we're getting to the tail end of the City of Bozeman's annual cleanup week, where they do provide garbage bags and safety vests and hauling for small groups to do community litter cleanups, and I have seen people out cleaning, so that's been really, really awesome. And then we have a bunch of different nonprofit organizations with all kinds of pet waste cleanups and litter cleanups that are coming up. So I just mentioned a few that are on the screen right now. These are also listed in the take-home resource. So these are the ones that are on my radar that are coming up in the next couple months. I'm sure there are others out there as well. So keep your eyes and ears out and hopefully get out there on the ground helping to clean up. And then I will also say, if you're part of a nonprofit organization and you do want to sponsor your own community litter cleanup, you should definitely reach out to me because that's the kind of thing that Republic Services loves to support through our community grants program. So we support the Gallatin Watershed Council's community cleanups, the Friends of Highlight, and we're happy to support other organizations as well. Finally, I think another part of getting involved with environmental issues does involve paying attention to legislation. When I was a kid, acid rain and the ozone layer were two major environmental concerns. And those are two concerns that are not as big of a deal here in the US anymore. And the reason why is legislation. We used legislation and regulation to very effectively address those problems. And other countries are definitely using legislation, especially what we call EPR, or Extended Producer Responsibility legislation, just to kind of help more responsibly manage our materials and waste streams. So this is something that I encourage you to just start looking into more, learning about different legislative issues at the state and federal levels, and contact your representatives and make sure that your voice is heard. I'm going to leave you all on a nice Jane Goodall quote. You cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. Essentially, when it comes to our waste, we live in a consumer society, and we make dozens and dozens of choices per day that absolutely have impacts on our waterways, on our atmosphere, on habitat and biodiversity, on environmental justice and equity, all these different types of issues. If we don't think about our choices, if we just go through American life like a robot, the average American will leave behind a legacy of 102 tons of garbage, 250,000 pounds of trash sitting at the landfill for future generations to have to deal with. Is that what you want to leave behind? I personally can say no. And so I do try to recognize that, look, that one little paper coffee cup I use may not be a big deal, but it's not just that one paper coffee cup. It's when I do that every day for weeks and weeks and years and years. And it's also recognizing that when it's not only me, but let's say 120,000 other people in Gallatin County doing that, or 325 million people in the US doing that, or almost 8 billion people in the world. So at the end of the day, our choices really do matter. One of the coolest things about working in the solid waste industry is I actually do think our choices matter more because we have a lot of control. I can easily choose to not throw out my leftover dinner. I can easily choose to bring my own mug or bring my own bag. Throughout the course of my lifetime, those positive choices really do add up in a very meaningful way. And I hope that tonight's talk has just encouraged you all to think twice about not only the stuff you're throwing out, but just where it came from and how it was made, and how you can maybe simplify a bit and focus on positive choices that conserve water and help minimize pollution. So that's pretty much all I have for all of you, and I will turn it over to questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexis. So much very interesting and very useful information. So thanks so much. So once again, if you want to ask a question to Alexis yourself, you can just go to the little raise your hand feature and you can unmute yourself. We already have a few questions coming in on the question box. I'll start with some of those. Rick asks, how does recycling work here in Bozeman and at Republic? I don't know, I guess you were pretty thorough, but if you want to add anything to that at all, go ahead, Alexis. So.
Yeah, the simple gist of it is in Gallatin County, whoever is collecting your recycling, it's all going to the same place, Four Corners Recycling, or We Recycle Montana. They're out off Jackrabbit. And what they do there is they sort the materials. So, you know, newspapers go in one pile, used beverage cans go in another, corrugated cardboard in another, and then they bale the materials just like hay bales. So you have bales of cans, bales of cardboard, and then once they reach a critical mass of, okay, we have an entire truckload of aluminum cans, let's say, they sell those products to recyclers. all of their recycling does stay domestic in the US, and their buyers, last I checked was about 6 months ago. I always like to check in and ask them, so where's stuff going? And it's everything from paper products, cardboard going to mills in the Northwest, plastics going to Washington State, aluminum I think is going to like Kentucky or Tennessee. So our recycling is kind of going to various recycling factories in the US where the stuff is then, you know, chopped up and actually recycled into new products.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, Roxana, well, first she said great talk, by the way, but she also has a question. She said, my air cleaner has a carbon element. How do I recycle that? And how about HEPA filters?
You know, I don't know about filters, but what I would say is I would look at Gallatin County Waste Management District website. I would see if that's, I don't know if that's under hazardous waste, and you can just call them and ask. They have a hazardous waste specialist, Ray, who's awesome, and will be able to tell you if that needs special treatment or if that can just go in the landfill.
Thanks. Okay, so Yuba is asking, she says, well, by the way, she says, thank you for emphasizing reduction. Can you explain what happens to the plastic recycling materials you collect? Does it get incinerated?
No, our plastics here, it's very limited. They do only take #1 plastic bottles and #2 jugs. And the reason why is those are the only plastics that there's actually a market for, that they're pretty easy to recycle and we do have domestic buyers for. So I know for a fact those plastics are not getting incinerated. They are getting shipped to recycling facilities. I know the ones here in Bozeman are staying domestic, and I even know Republic Services, we own the recycling center in Missoula, and I know we ship some of our plastics to British Columbia where they're recycled. But really what we've seen in the US is that a lot of recyclers are taking fewer plastics than in the past, because we used to export a lot of that waste to China and other Southeast Asian countries. And they recognized that a lot of it was not actually recyclable. It was trash. They got tired of being the world's dumping ground. And in 2018, China basically stopped taking our quote unquote recycling because there was so much trashy plastic mixed in. So basically, in some ways, I think, you know, the public is bummed that they can't recycle as much, but they don't realize that they weren't actually recycling. A lot of these junk plastics were getting sent to China and they were just getting thrown out anyway. So with plastics, I can't emphasize enough, it is something where we see a lot of contamination. We really, truly can only take #1 bottles, no clamshells, and #2 jugs. And it really, truly comes down to those are the only ones we can actually cut up, melt down, make into something new, and the economics work out.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, so we have another question from Rick. He's wondering, will glass recycling ever be expanded beyond the current paid third-party services?
Glass is so tricky, and I get asked about it all the time. The issue with glass is that it is heavy. If I were to go back to that slide that showed the product life cycle, glass is our worst material in terms of it is really heavy. It requires a lot of resources, energy, and water to manufacture. With recycling, we do not have an actual glass recycling facility in the entire state of Montana. We do have to ship glass to Salt Lake City, and the economics do not work out in terms of, especially as fuel prices go up, to ship glass that far, and then they're only paying pennies on the pound for it. That's one of the issues. The other major issue with glass recycling is that it doesn't work well with all-in-one recycling like Republic Services and the city of Bozeman have, where essentially if we mix glass bottles in with our cans and cardboard and plastic jugs, the glass certainly will shatter, and then those glass shards will stick to the other materials and they get kind of staticky, they stick really well and they don't come off and they serve as a contaminant. So for glass to be recyclable, you have to be able to separate it out, and then you need a facility that is nearby that can actually, crush up and melt down the glass. I don't know when or if we will ever get said facility in Montana. I'm sure there is an economies of scale where you need to be generating enough glass waste to make the facility economically profitable. I think it would be really cool to see that someday. I would love that personally because I hate throwing glass out. But at the same time, until we get a local glass manufacturing facility, I don't think we'll see it widely collected, and you can expect to pay a disposal fee because you're paying to transport it 400 miles to Salt Lake City.
Great. Well, Alexis, this has been such a wonderful evening, and I just learned so much. So thank you so much for being here. And I think we're going to wrap it up for tonight, but I'm sure if people have more questions, they can always reach out to you at Republic Services. So thanks again. And so I just want to wrap it up and say thank you all for coming. And please look for a follow-up email that will include a link to a recording of tonight's talk, and feel free to share that with anyone else you think who might enjoy getting all this great information. As far as Gallatin Valley Earth Day is concerned, you can go to our website and sign up for our newsletter and find out about other future events and other information and resources at www.gallatinvalleyearthday.org. And also you can get more information about recycling by going to Republic Services website at republicservices.com. So thanks again for joining us, and have a good evening. Hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Goodbye.